A little bell rang as I opened the door to the dingy old gas station, and a smell hit me immediately. It was a bit like spoiled meat mixed with diesel fumes, and I took an involuntary step backwards. I didn't want to go in there. But, I reminded myself, rent doesn't pay for itself. I needed this job. My parents had kicked me out 3 months prior, almost to the day, and had agreed to pay my first and last month's rent, mostly so I wouldn't end up on the street. After that, I had squeezed 2 more months out of them. But now, they were saying, it was time for me to fend for myself. No more handouts. I was officially cut off until further notice. And this time, they meant it. I need this job, I said to myself, out loud this time. I took a deep breath and stepped inside the place, forcing a smile onto my face as I prepared to begin my first ever training shift at Hollow's End Gas and Snacks. It couldn't possibly be that bad. The yellow-toothed grin of the man who greeted me across the counter seemed to say otherwise. He was 4 times my age by the look of him, and one of his eyes was milky white with cataracts. The other eye took me in with dull curiosity, through its own thinner film of white. "Hey there," he said, before bursting into a fit of wet coughing. "Yeah, I'm here for my first shift. Are you Bill?" I asked, once he was finished. "One and the same." He wiped his mouth on a rag, leaving red smears behind. "Come on around to this side. Actually, on second thought, let me give you the grand tour first, and then I'll show you how to work the cash register." Despite his age and presumably poor vision, the old man was off quickly, showing me the crowded storefront, then leading me through a back room into the storage area. He guided me around briefly, pointing out a scribbled-upon clipboard, an eye wash station, and a calendar indicating the schedule of deliveries. Then we were off to see the washrooms, the gas pumps, and back in again to where we started. After the grand tour, I was completely exhausted. The old man was quick, and he knew this place like the back of his hand, whereas I was constantly bumping into boxes and pallets and knocking things over in the crowded little space. "As you can see, we're a little bit behind on stocking the deliveries," the old man said. "As the night clerk, that's your job. Have you ever faced merchandise before?" Yeah, I wheezed, a bit out of breath. "I face merchandise all the time, whenever I go to the store. Stuff is everywhere." No, facing the..." He laughed, putting his hand over his face. "Never mind. It's like this. Here, I'll show you." He went over to a nearby shelf and pulled a box of crackers from the back and pushed it to the front. Then he did the same with the chips and the pretzels. "You put them at the front so they look nicer, more appealing for people to buy. It's called facing, because this way you can see the face of the merchandise more easily. Everything in the store should look like this," he said, and I tried not to notice the merchandise in boxes everywhere, and not on the shelves. Almost none of it was faced. "Well, looks like it's a good thing you got some help tonight," I said. "We're gonna be busy." "You're gonna be busy," he corrected. "I'm just finishing my shift. Come on, I'll show you how the cash register works." My heart skipped a beat when he said that, but I didn't have time to think about it for too long, as he was then leading me around the counter to the other side. He started pressing buttons on the cash register, showing me how to operate it, but I was far too distracted by something on the wall. It wasn't visible upon entering the store. You had to be on this side of the counter to see it. It was a list of rules for running the gas station. Probably made up by the owner of the place, I thought. "What's this?" I asked, running my eyes over it, and growing more and more unnerved by the strangeness of it. "Oh, don't worry about that for now. Let me show you how this works first." I pried my eyes away from the poster reluctantly, and finally settled them on what he was doing. But I missed the first half of his cash register demonstration, as my eyes kept being drawn back to the list. A fact I would greatly regret later. "Okay, that about does it," he said, once he finished his demo. "I'm out of here. I'll see you in the morning at 7 sharp. If you have any problems, my number's on the..." "Wait, you're leaving me here alone?" I almost yelled. I couldn't believe my ears. "I just got here. I don't know how to do any of this stuff." He was already headed for the door. "You'll figure it out. It ain't rocket science, kid. Just follow the rules, you'll be fine. Call me if you run into any problems. Barely sleep as it is." "I thought this was a training shift. Isn't there someone else who can stay with me while I..." "It was a training shift. I trained you, didn't I? And nope, there's nobody else but me. I just worked for 12 hours and I'm back again tomorrow for another 12. So, it's up to you now. Got it? Trusting you to run this place, understand? You got a big responsibility. We're all counting on you." I stammered something else in response, but he was already out the door. "Read the rules," I heard him yell over his shoulder as he stepped out into the fresh evening air. "They'll tell you everything you need to know." I stood in the middle of the store, watching him go, thinking about chasing after him. I could say I wasn't feeling well. I was sick and needed to... No. I needed to stay, I realized. It was time to be an adult and earn some damn money for myself. To pay my way. But every ounce of my being wanted to run out that door and never come back. Reading the list of rules did not help. Rules for Hollow's End, gas, and snacks. Night shift, the poster read. I began to examine it, thinking it was going to be just a list of duties. I wasn't wrong at first, but as I continued to go down the list, I became more and more confused. Rule number 1. All merchandise must be restocked and faced for the day shift. Rule number 2. Remove all empty pallets and crates from the storefront area before 7 a.m. Rule number 3. When the cash register contains more than $100, deposit half into the safe. You will not require the code to make deposits, and the combination is withheld from you for your own safety in the event of a robbery. Rule number 4. If a white Cadillac convertible pulls up to the gas pumps at 3:52 a.m., do not turn on the pumps. Do not assist them or respond to the driver or his passenger in any way. Rule number 5. Do not exit the gas station between the hours of 3 and 4 a.m. under any circumstances. Rule number 6. If a spontaneous fire breaks out in the storage room, do not attempt to put it out. Do not leave the building until the fire spreads to the storefront area, at which time the fire department may be notified. I had to reread this rule several times. It had to be a misprint, I told myself. It made absolutely no sense. Did they really want me to wait to call 911 if a fire breaks out in the back room? And to not evacuate the building? That was crazy, right? I continued to read, only getting more and more bewildered. Rule number 7. If the phone rings, please answer it. If the person speaking to you on the phone sounds familiar, hang up immediately. Rule number 8. There are no cats allowed in the store. Rule number 9. The store's pet rat is named Melvin. Please replenish his water bowl if you see it is getting low. It is located in the back room beneath the sink. Rule number 10. If the lights go out, don't move until they come back on. Try not to make too much noise and avoid loud breathing. Rule number 11. Provide exact change when interacting with customers. Do not accept tips under any circumstances. The till must be balanced for the day shift. Rule number 12. If you become dizzy due to sudden smells, sights, or sounds, you may step outside for a 5-minute break once every hour. The only time you may not leave the building is between 3 and 4 a.m., as stated previously in rule number 5. Rule number 13. Have fun. The last rule seemed to be tacked on purely for a gag, like several of the others, and to ensure the list totaled an unlucky 13, I assumed. Why not make it extra weird and creepy after all? I looked down at my watch. It was 7:01 p.m. I had officially started my first hour of work. I was making money. I tried not to think too much about how little money it was, considering it was minimum wage, and instead reread the list several times. After doing that, I looked at my watch again. Somehow, it was still 7:01 p.m. It was going to be a very, very long night. I decided to start my shift by knocking off the first 2 items on the list. I would stock the shelves, face the products, and put all the empty crates and pallets in the back room. That would inevitably take several hours, if not longer. After about 30 minutes, I was pretty much finished. I only had 1 item left to restock. The clock on the wall hung there with its hands unmoving, mocking me with the slow march of time. As I began to refill the empty spots on the shelf in the condiment section, where spicy mustard had once been, I heard a sound. I looked outside to see a car pulling up to the gas pumps. I watched as they got out of their car, walked around it to the gas pump, and began trying to use it. Their expression quickly turned to one of confusion, then anger, as they looked over at me and saw me standing there, holding spicy mustard in both hands, and gawking at them stupidly. "Hey, can you turn the pump on?" I heard the guy yell after a few more seconds. I realized he was looking at me, watching him through the glass doors. "Oh, sorry," I yelled back, remembering I worked there. I ran behind the counter, still holding the mustard in both hands. Once back there, I quickly realized I had no idea what I was doing. There was probably a button or a switch somewhere to turn on the pumps, but I had no idea where it could be. I didn't remember the old man even mentioning it, but I had zoned out for quite a while when he was talking. My armpits were getting soggy with sweat, and I felt beads of it running down my brow. My hands were shaking as I lifted papers and searched between objects for a switch or a button that said gas pumps, or something similar. But I didn't find anything. I looked back outside, and the man and car were both gone, as if they'd never been there to begin with. But I didn't remember hearing the double ding which would indicate him leaving. I ran outside, thinking maybe I could wave him back, but there were no cars on the road for at least a mile in either direction. Weird. Oh well, I thought to myself. It'll just give me more time to figure out how gas pumps work. After taking another breath of fresh air, I went back into the gas station. As soon as I did, I remembered one of the dumb rules. If it was to be believed, I could only go outside once per hour, which meant I had to stay in that smelly-ass gas station until... I looked at my watch. 7:48 p.m. Shit. This night was dragging in the worst way. Still more than 11 hours to go. And I couldn't step outside again until 8:49 p.m. I put an alarm on my phone so I would remember the time exactly. Even if the list of rules was bullshit, I was determined to make a good impression and follow them regardless. Once, while on a field trip in middle school, I heard a story about the centuries-old hiring processes of a castle in my hometown. When they were hiring maids, they would hide a penny in a room somewhere, and would tell the potential maid to clean the room. If they found the penny and kept it, that meant they were trustworthy. If they didn't find the penny, that meant they weren't very good at cleaning. But if they found the penny and returned it to the owner, they would be hired. Maybe this place was a bit like that. The list of ridiculous rules were all there to test me, to see if I would follow directions, no matter how mundane or outrageous. And I was determined to prove that I could do this. I went back behind the counter and immediately noticed the switches for the gas pumps, located right in front of my face where they'd been the whole time. What can I say? I'm unobservant, I guess. That solved that dilemma, at least. I looked back at the list again, studying it more closely this time. Bill had said that if I followed the rules, everything would be okay, and I decided I would try my best to observe all of them as well as I could. I finished restocking the mustard, then got rid of all the pallets that were crowding the storefront, bringing them into the dingy back room. When I returned from the back of the store, something bizarre happened. Something scary. A lot of what I saw is hard to put into words. A skeptic or scientist would likely come up with some explanation for it all, and would say I just imagined the worst aspects of it. But trust me when I say, I know what I saw. And it remains unexplainable, no matter how many ways I look at it. The fluorescent lights glowed brightly, flaring up and blinding me momentarily. Then, they all went out at once. It was fully dark outside, and even the glowing sign for the gas station had gone dim, the humming buzz of the neon now quiet. Snow began to fall softly, making white spots on the pavement outside. The rules, my mind said suddenly. There was a rule about this. I tried to remember what it said, and told myself to settle my breathing and be quiet. That was what it had instructed, to stay quiet and not breathe too loudly. It was difficult, but I managed to do it, after a few quick moments of hyperventilation. Something about the dark space was setting me on edge, and I didn't like it one bit. There was something moving outside, passing in front of the store windows and blocking what little glow there was from the moon and stars. A chill ran through me, and I suddenly began to feel very, very cold. The temperature in the store seemed to have dropped by 20 degrees, and it was still plummeting steadily lower. I started shivering, my teeth chattering. Suddenly, there was a ding from the front door. As it opened and slammed closed, someone stepped inside and began to walk toward me in the darkness. As they drew closer, the air around me grew colder and colder, until it felt as if my skin would freeze into solid ice. Their footsteps were slow and purposeful, and I could tell they knew where I was standing. Somehow, the sound of them walking was the most unsettling part. When their feet hit the floor, there was a wet squelching with each step, as if they'd just been swimming in their shoes. But the snow had just begun to fall a few seconds prior, which begged the question, where did this figure come from? Why were they soaking wet? And with what? For some reason, I imagined a man with the face of a shark, soaked in blood from a fresh kill. Every part of me wanted to run, but where would I go? And the rules had said to stay still, not to move, and to quiet your breathing. So that's what I did. Whatever was in front of me, now within arm's reach, did not sound like a human, I realized. Their breathing was more akin to a wild animal. Short, quick intakes of air, sniffing and taking in my scent. Shaking, I told myself to stay quiet. It was working. Whatever I was doing was working. The creature's form became more pronounced as my eyes adjusted to the darkness. But I wish they hadn't. I wish I hadn't been able to see what stood in front of me that night. Its image will haunt me. I turned my eyes away, not wanting to observe it anymore. And slowly, ever so slowly, it turned and walked away. The door opened and closed again. The lights flickered and eventually turned back on, as the temperature rose rapidly back to normal. And I was left shaking, standing in the aisle, wondering what the hell I had just witnessed. After taking a while to recover from what had just happened, I went back over the list of rules again. This seemed to confirm that even the strangest aspects of the list might be real. And whatever this place was, it wasn't your average gas station. That's when I remembered I had Bill's phone number. I could call him and ask him what the hell was going on. I pulled out my cell phone. It was dead. I tried to turn it back on, but it was now a useless, very expensive brick. Shit. Whatever had happened to the lights had clearly affected my phone as well. Hopefully, it was just temporary. I tried the landline behind the counter, but of course, it was also dead. Great. Now what do I do if there's a fire or something? I asked no one in particular. Hopefully it was temporary, whatever was causing the outage. For some reason, I thought of an EMP, a weapon which temporarily disables electronics. I wondered if the thing that had come into the gas station had some sort of ability, which created an electromagnetic pulse. Anything was possible, and clearly more things were possible than I'd ever previously imagined, based on the events of the night so far. As I was reading through the list of rules again, for the 50th time, the landline phone rang. I guess it's working again, I thought to myself. And as I picked it up, my eyes settled again on rule number 7. If the phone rings, please answer it. If the person speaking to you on the phone sounds familiar, hang up immediately. Hello? I said.
Hey, it's Bill.
The voice on the other end of the line said.
How's it going, kid?
When I didn't reply, he continued.
Listen, I feel kind of bad how I left you so quick. Do you need me to come back in to give you a hand with anything?
Every part of me wanted to answer and say, yes, please, Bill. For the love of God, please come back and explain to me what the hell is going on in this place. But I resisted. Because the list of rules had said not to speak to the person if they were someone I knew. And I knew Bill. I'd met him earlier and he'd explained what facing meant. I was pretty sure that qualified.
Oh, right,
Bill said.
I forgot all about that dumb list of rules. It's just a joke, kid. Something the owner came up with to haze newcomers. The White Stag's a real practical joker. You'll see when you meet him. Don't worry about that list, though. Only the first few are actually real.
I opened my mouth, ready to reply. Ready to laugh it all off and move on with the night. But then, I remembered the blackout. And the creature. That thing had been real. Which meant that the rules were also real.
You there, kid?
Bill's voice was starting to sound angry. Impatient. I almost spoke again, afraid of disappointing him. But I bit my tongue for another few seconds.
Answer me.
He sounded different, I realized. Not exactly Bill, but some close approximation of him. Like a recording slightly slowed down or sped up. I started to put the receiver down, and as I did, I could hear him continue speaking. But his voice was changing, becoming deeper, more distorted and inhuman by the second.
Answer me, boy. You will answer for your sins. Grothrock will have you. He will eat your soul and dine on your insides as you...
When his voice was finally cut off and it was quiet again, I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. It was pounding so hard I could feel my pulse beating in my neck. My hands were shaking again and I was sweating through my shirt. I was going to need a shower in the morning, after all this was done. The next customer that came into the store was exceedingly normal. It really threw me off. After everything that had happened so far, I actually jumped a bit when I saw him. Thankfully, he didn't seem to notice. The man was wearing a plaid shirt and denim jeans, and he was roaming the aisles as if looking for a snack. His eyes settled on the pizza-flavored combos and a pack of Twizzlers, and then he was off to the fridges at the back of the store containing drinks. He took a while to decide what he was going to buy back there. The whole time, I'm freaking out. Like, this guy's going to expect me to know what I'm doing here, and I'm going to completely disappoint him. Like, what if he wants to pay with debit? What if he wants to pay with cash? What the hell am I supposed to do? I was getting flop sweats again, I realized, as the man started wandering over towards the cash register. He wasn't even looking at me, but instead was trying to pick out a candy bar. How many snacks was this guy buying? Did he have the munchies or something? Finally, after grabbing a king-size Twix and a Snickers bar, he started setting things down on the counter. I picked up the bag of combos, hoping some sort of hidden Jason Bourne gas station clerk reflex muscle memory would kick in. It did not. We stood there awkwardly making eye contact for several long seconds. First day? The guy asked, his eyebrows raised. This place has so much turnover, it's like a frickin' revolving door. He laughed in a way that made me feel better, even though he was technically laughing at me. I've been coming here for a while. Bill taught me how to work the cash register once during an emergency. I can show you again if you want. I know his training shifts are, cursory at best. I thought about his offer for a few milliseconds. Sure, what the hell? I really should have been paying better attention. He came back behind the register and offered me his hand. I'm Steve. Steve Hennessy. Rob Smith, I said back. Cool. Okay, here's what you need to know, he said, and went on to explain the ins and outs of the old cash register. Thankfully, the debit machine had been replaced recently, so it worked better than most. He hit a button after ringing up his own purchases, and the cash register popped open. That's all there is to it, he said, grabbing a bag and putting his things in it. Usually the clerk does this part, but it's not a big deal. Oh, sorry, I said, reaching out to help him awkwardly, even though he was already done. I got it, man. It's all good. Alright, I hope that helped. Have a good rest of your shift. He started walking out, and I called after him. Wait, hang on. He stopped at the open door and looked back at me, with somewhat of a guilty look on his face. What's with the rules? Are they for real? Something came in here when the lights were out and... His face went a shade paler, and he didn't answer for a few long moments. Yeah, they're for real, dude. Take care of yourself. Looks like you're doing good so far. Still alive, after all. Even after coming face to face with Winter's Kiss. Just keep following the rules, and you'll be fine. Oh, okay, thanks. Wait, what's the... His voice was muffled through the glass as he called something back over his shoulder. Something which took me several minutes to decipher. After piecing it together, I realized what he'd said. Make sure you balance your till. And then something else occurred to me. Steve had opened the register, but he hadn't actually put anything inside of it. The son of a bitch just walked away without paying. I almost ran outside to chase after him, but then I looked at the clock on the wall and realized I couldn't. It still hadn't been an hour since I'd last went outside, for another brief fresh air break. I was trapped in here. And worse yet, I would have to put my own damn money in the register to balance what I'd lost. At least it gave me another chance to practice using the register, I thought, going through the steps again, same as before. I took back my change, leaving almost $20 of my own cash in the till, and hoped that would be sufficient to undo the evil which Steve had wrought. I was about to refresh myself on the list of rules again, when a squeaking sound came from near my feet, and I looked down to see a pudgy rat with brown fur and white whiskers. I actually screamed out loud, almost kicking the poor thing. But then I remembered one of the rules. Rule number 9. The store's pet rat is named Melvin. Please replenish his water bowl if you see it is getting low. It is located in the back room beneath the sink. Oh shit, it's Melvin! I cried out loud. The rat stood up on its hind legs, squeaking happily upon hearing his name. Then it ran off towards the back room, stopping once to look back over its shoulder, saucily. The message was clear. Melvin wanted me to follow him. I happily obliged, thinking maybe this would provide a bit of comic relief from the horrible things which had happened so far. It turned out it really did. After refilling Melvin's water bowl, we played fetch for hours, using a miniature tennis ball someone had found for him. He was basically a little rodent dog, I realized, and warmed up to him immediately. I'd never met a rat so smart, that was for sure. He was a genius. The Albert Einstein of rodents. Little Melvin got me through that night, if I'm being honest. He's a tiny hero, and I'll always remember him for that. But eventually it was time to get back to work, I realized, hearing the sound of a car pulling up to the gas pumps. Things really are slow around here, I thought, once again remembering I was working at my first real job. I haven't had a customer for hours. The clock in the storefront area read 3:52 a.m. Something about that number was ringing alarm bells in my head, but I was too focused on getting the gas pumps turned on, and ignored my instincts. As I switched on the pumps, my eyes caught a glimpse of the list of rules on the wall. The list of rules I had completely forgotten about. Oh shit, I said out loud. Melvin had been a really great distraction. While playing with him, I'd forgotten I was working at all. But now I was realizing that the distraction he'd provided had also distracted me from the very important task of remembering those damned rules, and I had just blatantly disobeyed one of them. My eyes focused on the car outside, and its driver and passenger. It was an old white Cadillac convertible, and the man getting out of it seemed to be from another era. He was wearing a brimmed hat and a suit, and he was yelling at his passenger. The woman was likewise from another age, wearing an old-fashioned dress, her hair done up in a perm. She screamed something at the man, and spit in his direction, and his face went red with anger. He might have been pissed before, but whatever she had said made him go absolutely nuclear. Removing the nozzle from the gas pump, he began to spray it all over the car, soaking it and her with gasoline. The woman in the passenger seat was trying to get out, but she was slipping on the wet leather seats. She fell, cracking her head on the dashboard as she went down. "Fuck, the pumps!" I screamed, looking down and flicking switches with trembling hands. But whatever I did, it was too little, too late. The man removed a Zippo from his pocket, flicked it open, and lit it with one smooth movement. Then he tossed it into the car. A fireball exploded from the vehicle, so bright I had to shield my eyes. It set them both aflame, but only one of them tried to run, right towards me. The man was a glowing ball of fire, racing in my direction, and screaming like a banshee. As he pressed his face against the glass, pounding on it with his fists, I saw his skin melting like candle wax. He locked eyes with me, screaming something indiscernible through the glass, and then ran off towards the back of the building, leaving some of his melted flesh behind. "Oh shit, the back room!" I yelped, immediately guessing what was going to happen next. There was a loud bang as the man crashed through a door and came screaming into the back room. Within moments, the fire was spreading there. I slowly turned my head and looked back at the poster again. Rule number 6. If a spontaneous fire breaks out in the storage room, do not attempt to put it out. Do not leave the building unless the fire spreads to the storefront area, at which time the fire department may be notified. Melvin was at my feet, and I looked down at him worriedly. His face was bathed in flickering light from the nearby fire, and his eyes said, "This is bad." "Well, little buddy, guess we're just gonna have to wait this one out," I said, stroking the top of his head with one finger. I pulled out my phone and looked to see if it was working again, just in case the fire decided to spread to the front of the store. Then I could call 911, I guess. Of course, it wasn't working. The screen of my Pixel remained lifeless and black. I tried the power button, but it did nothing. The bell above the door dinged suddenly, causing me to shift my attention that way. When I did, I noticed the flaming white Cadillac outside was gone. My eyes flicked over to the fire in the back room, and it was also gone. Now there was just me, a rat, and a scraggly-looking guy standing in front of me, holding a crumpled $10 bill in his hand.
"Pack of Marlboros?"
He coughed, putting the money on the counter.
"How's your night going?"
After checking the guy out, and then collecting my sanity, I tried to settle my nerves. I looked up at the clock on the wall. It was now 4:32 a.m., which meant I only had a couple hours to go. I could make it through this madness. I would make it through this madness. The phone rang again. I picked it up, hearing someone say in a friendly voice,
"Hi, it's Bethany's mom?"
I immediately slammed the phone down again, hanging up on her. I couldn't really remember if I'd met her mom, but I definitely knew someone named Bethany. We'd been pretty close for a while, and it was entirely possible I'd briefly met her mother in passing. This place was testing my brainpower and recall to their utter limits, forcing me to remember every detail of my existence to prevent a catastrophe. Either that or someone named Bethany worked at the gas station, and I just hung up on their mother for no apparent reason. After waiting to make sure the phone didn't ring again, I decided to take a walk to the back room. I pushed the door open nervously, with Melvin cowering behind my shoes, wondering if I would find a charred pile of ash and blackened timbers among boxes of charcoal Doritos. But no, it was just the same old boring stockroom I'd seen earlier. I picked up the clipboard and put it back down again, very gently. So, who were those people in the Cadillac? Ghosts? Their clothes and the car itself had looked decades old. Had the fire been a vision of the past? Or some other lunacy conjured up by this place? I decided, at this early hour of the morning, I really didn't care anymore. I was too tired to care about anything but sleep, and I wouldn't get any of that sweetness until I finished my shift. Wandering back behind the counter, I sat down and flipped through an old magazine someone had left behind. When I was done with that, I found a broom and swept the store. I read the list again and decided to take another breather outside. As I opened the glass door, I saw a cat approaching from around the side of the building. It was trying really hard to be stealthy, but I saw it coming and slammed the door just before it could get inside. "No cats allowed," I said. "I see you down there, trying to pull a fast one on me, but it's not going to happen." The cat seemed unperturbed. It sat down just outside the door and began licking its paw. I stood there for a few minutes, enjoying the fresh-ish air, slightly tainted by petrol fumes. Then I decided to head back in. No sense pushing it now, I thought. The rule said 5 minutes of outdoors time per hour, so that's what I'm sticking to. But when I tried to go back inside, the cat was right there, attempting to squeeze through the door. I closed it again, trying to nudge the cat out of the way with my boot. The cat swiped at my leg with its claws roughly a dozen times in quick succession. They were sharp, tearing through my pant leg like it was tissue paper. Ow! Fuck! Seriously, cat? I screamed, hopping away from the door. The pudgy kitty went back to licking its paw, as if cleansing itself of my dirty human blood. I decided to run around to the back of the building, to use the other door. I had no idea how much time I had left, and just hoped there was enough. The cat followed after me, picking up its pace to match mine. It seemed like he really wanted to eat that super intelligent rat. Maybe it was a Tom and Jerry type of situation. I can't really say. Either way, we were both disappointed when we got to the back door and found it locked. I could see some old black marks around the boarded windows back there, and thought they looked like evidence of some ancient fire from decades prior. The flaming Cadillac driver, maybe? I ran quickly towards the front of the store again, cutting the corner just in front of the chubby cat, who was matching my pace a little too easily. Pulling the door open, I spun inside and tried to shut it behind myself, just barely managing to keep the cat out. It smushed its face against the glass and growled angrily, and I looked behind me to see Melvin cowering beneath one of the fridges. "Not today, pal," I said, dusting my hands off and feeling a little like Clint Eastwood. Melvin was scurrying towards me a second later, looking like he wanted to climb my leg and go right at my body to sit atop my head, either to bite my face or operate me like Ratatouille. I danced backwards and ran behind the counter. How about just an air high five?" I called over to him. He ran away, back to the storeroom, clearly offended. The phone rang again a few more times, and I decided to just ignore it, killing the rest of my shift by reading the same magazine articles over and over again. Eventually, by some magic, I blinked my eyes and it was 6:58 a.m. Not gonna lie, it's entirely possible that I fell asleep briefly. Bill came through the front door of the gas station, taking in the new state of the store. The shelves had all been restocked, the pallets and boxes had been cleared, and I'd even swept the whole place. "Something feels off," he said, looking at me with a hint of worry. I almost went off on a long-winded story about the Cadillac, but before I could, he asked me, "Did you balance the till?" It occurred to me at that moment that I'd made a terrible mistake. When I'd punched in another purchase in order to pay the missing money, I had inadvertently caused another imbalance. I had doubled the amount of missing cash in the till, and only replaced half of it. "Oh shit!" I cried, quickly punching keys and telling the cash register I wanted to pay for something that only cost a penny. The floor was shaking, ever so slightly, but that vibration was getting louder and heavier by the second. Not only that, but there was now smoke pouring out of the back room again, and pudgy cats were looking in at us through every window. "What did you do? What did you do?" Bill was screaming, running over to me. The clock on the wall read 6:59 a.m. The cash register was billowing smoke and emitting a shrill noise. Finally, I got the register open and deposited my penny, plus the money for the imaginary purchase I'd made earlier. In my mind, this made sense now. What can I say? I've never worked retail in a haunted gas station before. I don't know how these things go. It must have worked, since the cash register stopped billowing smoke and screaming at us, and Bill reluctantly calmed down. He took a deep breath, looked around the store again, and then back at me. "Okay, pretty good for your first shift. It's a little smoky in here, so I'm guessing you got distracted and forgot about rule number 4. But that's okay. Happens to the best of us." I stared at him stupidly for a few seconds before stuttering something. What was the... How did... "Take a deep breath, son," he said. "Collect your thoughts." What the fuck is the deal with this place? I managed to get out, after several long moments of hyperventilation.
Oh, it's cursed. And it's in Hollow's End. You're new around here, I take it?
Well, yeah, rental prices seemed low, and... What does that have to do with anything? This isn't normal. You get that this isn't normal, right?
Sure. You get used to it. By the way, I'll need your social if you decide to stay. And your bank account info if you want direct deposit. I can always just hand you a check on the 1st and 15th, but it's a hell of a lot easier if you just go there and get one of those little forms.
I took a few seconds to collect my thoughts before responding. Can we just talk about this for a few seconds? Like, what was that thing that came in here when all the lights were out? And who was the guy in the Cadillac? Was he a ghost? And how is Melvin so smart? And is there a Bethany who works here?
Nah, but her mom likes to call and chat sometimes. She's pretty cool if you get to know her.
He was about to move on to the rest of my questions, but before he could, the morning rush started. There were 12 customers in and out within a matter of minutes. Bill worked fast for a guy his age, and I started feeling fortunate I worked the night shift, rather than this busy time of day. The rules were tough, but customer service? That's a real nightmare.
So, are you gonna be back again tonight?
Bill asked, sounding stressed between customers.
I don't know if I could pull another 36-hour shift if you decided to quit.
Well, if I did come back, would you answer some more of my questions about this place? I asked. Tell me what the deal is with this town? It seems a little weird. An old lady in line gave me a dirty look.
Youngsters these days,
she said, shaking her head.
This town is special, young man. You should be happy to live here. And besides, it's not like you can leave now.
Huh? Sorry, what? What now?
Uriel. Poor guy's already had a long night. No need to worry him further just yet. It was his first shift, and he survived the night. That should tell you something about his character.
She harumphed, but gave me a warm smile on her way out. I got the feeling the old bird was nicer than she let on, if you got to know her.
Don't mind her,
Bill assured me.
Now, what do you say? Are you coming back tonight? Or do I need to put up another ad on Craigslist?
Melvin the Rat was watching me from the corner, waiting to hear what I would say, as were several other customers in line, who were all waiting for me to answer so Bill could finish ringing them up. I need this job, I said to myself. There's no going back now. I'll see you tonight, Bill. 7 o'clock sharp, I said, going out the door.
Actually, it's polite to show up a few minutes prior to the start.
Bill's voice faded through the closed glass door as I began to walk away, heading back towards my Hollow's End apartment. I got the feeling this town was going to be all right. Just like working at the gas station. It was strange. But once you got used to it, it was kind of special, too. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.